The rain hit harder than before, sharp, cold needles slashing the windshield as if warning him to turn back. But Jonathan didn't. He couldn't. Not after what he saw. In the dim blur of a gas station's flickering lights, a woman stood barefoot on the soaked pavement, arms wrapped around four little girls who clung to her as if the world was ending. One of them, a child too small, too quiet, lifted her hand and tapped the glass of his luxury sedan. Her voice didn't carry. It didn't need to. She said, "This is our last night. That if we don't eat, we disappear." Then she fainted. Jonathan threw the door open, heart pounding, designer shoes sinking into puddles, arms reaching out before logic could stop him. He didn't know them. Didn't know her. But something cracked inside him, a wound from years ago tearing open with the weight of that little girl's fall. And as he held her trembling body in his arms, something even colder than the storm curled in his gut. The woman, pale and shaking, whispered her name. Sophia Pierce. Jonathan froze. That name had nearly destroyed his life. He hadn't said much after the girl collapsed. Just held her tighter as Jonathan carried the weightless child into the diner. Her name echoed in his head like a siren, Sophia Pierce. It couldn't be a coincidence. Could it? She sat across from him now in the back booth, steam from the soup swirling between them, for identical girls curled up in borrowed coats beside their mother, eyes too old for 5-year-olds. "You didn't have to do this," Sophia whispered without meeting his gaze. "I know," he replied, watching Violet peel a sticker from the soup bowl as if afraid it would break. "But I wanted to." She nodded, once. The kind of nod that cost something. Outside, the rain smeared neon into rivers of pink and blue, painting the diner windows like melted memory. Jonathan's phone buzzed for the 4th time, calls from investors, emails marked urgent. But none of it reached him. Not here. Not now. Not with the name Pierce pulsing in his veins like an old wound. The waitress brought pancakes, extra syrup. The girls ate silently, except for one, Daisy, who kept glancing at the window like she was waiting for something. Or someone. Jonathan turned back to Sophia. "You said you're between places. How long have you been like this?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she unfolded a napkin and smoothed it gently before folding it again, precisely, corner to corner. Long enough to stop counting. That line dug under his skin, anchored in some part of him he didn't like touching. The part that still saw Charlotte every time he looked at Tyler's sleeping face. The part that remembered exactly how it felt to be alone in a world full of people who didn't see you. "You can stay in my guest house," he said suddenly, before logic had a chance to filter the words. Sophia blinked. "Excuse me. I have space. Clean beds. A stocked kitchen. The girls can rest." She studied him like she didn't believe kindness came without strings. "We're not charity." "I know," he said softly. "But kids shouldn't sleep in cars." Sophia looked down at her hands. One of them trembled. She covered it with the other. "He'll find us," she said after a beat. "He always does." "Who?" he asked, though he already knew. She didn't speak, but the name hovered in the air like smoke. Maxwell Pierce. The man who once sat across a boardroom table from Jonathan and lied through a polished smile. The man who had stolen his prototype, buried him in lawsuits, slashed his name in every media outlet until Charlotte cried from the stress. That man. That man had daughters. And now they were here. In Jonathan's booth. In his city. Sophia's voice broke the silence. "We don't stay long anywhere. One of them usually gets sick, or someone recognizes us. So we move." "You're safe here," Jonathan said before he could stop himself. But was that even true? He dropped them at the guest house an hour later. The girls were drowsy, full of pancakes and warmth. Sophia clutched a tote bag that looked more like a memory than luggage. Before stepping inside, she turned to him. "You don't owe us anything." Jonathan met her eyes. They were shadowed but sharp. "Maybe I'm not doing this for you," he said. "Maybe I'm doing it for me." Sophia didn't ask what he meant. She didn't need to. That night, Jonathan sat in the dark of his penthouse, staring at an old newspaper article. Pierce Innovations acquires rival software in controversial merger. Charlotte had circled Maxwell's name in red ink. Beneath it, she'd written in neat teacher's handwriting, "Don't let this break you." He hadn't. Not completely. But now the ghost of that man was living in his backyard. Wrapped in 4 little bodies with eyes like storm clouds. Downstairs, in the guest house, Violet cried in her sleep. Sophia held her close, whispering lullabies with cracked lips. Across the city, a black car sat idling in a parking garage, windows tinted. The man inside scrolled through photos of a grocery store security cam. A woman. 4 girls. A luxury sedan pulling up beside them. Jonathan Morgan. "Found you," Maxwell said under his breath, tapping ash from his cigarette. Back in the mansion, Tyler found the sketchbook Jonathan left on the kitchen table. Child-friendly architecture designs, napkin thin, barely inked. A few were signed, SP. "Dad?" Tyler called, but no answer came. Because Jonathan was still on the balcony, glass of scotch in hand, watching the storm roll back in across Seattle. And he was thinking one thing, over and over. Why didn't she tell me her last name that night? And why do I already care that she didn't? The day had started with sun, one of those rare spring mornings in Seattle when the sky looked like brushed cotton and hope felt possible. Sophia had woken with all 4 girls curled into her sides, their bodies too small for the queen-sized motel bed they shared. Violet had a fever. Daisy had wet the sheets. They were down to 1 granola bar and $2 in coins. She didn't cry anymore. Not even when she saw the eviction note slipped under the door. Not even when the motel manager pretended not to know them. She just gathered their things. In the parking lot, she whispered to the girls like she always did. "Today we'll find something better." She didn't believe it, but children don't need truth, they need rhythm. She kept them in motion. Feet moving meant hearts stayed intact. They walked past breakfast diners they couldn't afford, playgrounds they didn't dare stop at, and finally ended up in front of a small grocery store tucked between an auto shop and a shuttered bakery. Sophia had studied the clearance signs for 20 minutes before even trying. Then, holding her breath like it might change everything, she walked inside with her head high and her voice soft. "Sir. I have 4 kids. I'll have funds tomorrow. Could I just take a loaf of bread?" The man behind the counter didn't even look up. "This isn't a soup kitchen. Move along." She didn't argue. Pride had sharp edges, but hunger dulled them. Outside, the girls stood in their usual formation, hands linked, eyes down. A pedestrian had dropped a half-eaten banana in the trash. Daisy was eyeing it. Sophia stepped in front of her before she could reach. And that's when the car pulled up. Black. Sleek. Quiet like a question. She heard the window roll down before she saw his face. "Do you need help?" The voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't pitying. It was calm. Masculine. Accented with something clean, precise. The kind of voice she hadn't heard in years, except in memory, when Maxwell's voice had been sweet before it became cold. She turned sharply. Defensive. Her instinct was to lie. "We're fine." But then Violet, the smallest, tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, I'm hungry." Her voice broke something. Not in Sophia. In the man. He stepped out into the sun. Suit jacket over one arm. Dress shoes on wet pavement. She scanned him, wealth. Power. A man who had somewhere else to be. And yet here he was, looking at her as if her pain mattered. "I'm Jonathan," he said. "Let me buy you lunch." Sophia wanted to say no. She wanted to say a lot of things. But the look in Daisy's eyes, dull, gray, ancient, stole the words. They followed him in silence to a diner down the street. The girls moved like shadows, trained to blend in. Sophia hated how natural it felt. How automatic. Inside, the warmth hit them like a slap. Coffee. Bacon. Real light. She hesitated at the door. "Sit," Jonathan said. "Let them be kids for a minute." So she did. And they did. The girls devoured pancakes with reverent care. No syrup spilled. No utensils clanged. When Violet reached for a packet of sugar and flinched, Sophia realized how deeply the rules of Maxwell's house had carved into their instincts. "You don't talk much," Jonathan noted. "I found people prefer that." "I don't." She finally looked at him. He had kind eyes. Tired, but not cruel. His features were sharp, but there was something soft behind the jawline. A man used to control, but not yet consumed by it. "Where's their father?" he asked gently. Sophia froze. That was always the moment when kindness twisted into judgment. But Jonathan didn't follow up. He didn't need to. After a long moment, she said, "He didn't want girls." Jonathan's face didn't flinch. But something inside him did. He saw them differently now, not as victims but survivors. And her? She wasn't just a mother. She was a wall between these children and the world. "They're all yours?" he asked. She nodded. "Quadruplets. Names?" "Lily. Rose. Daisy. Violet." He smiled faintly. "Flowers. They were the only beautiful thing I got to keep." That sentence landed with weight. Jonathan didn't speak for a while. Instead, he watched the girls. They were sharing a spoon between them, not out of lack, but because that's what they'd been taught: don't take more than you're given. He couldn't stand it. "Let me help," he said. "I have space. A guest house. No strings." Sophia looked at him, trying to gauge the angle. The threat. The price. "There's always something," she whispered. "Not this time." She stared a little longer. Then nodded. It was the smallest movement. But for her, it was war. That night, after he dropped them off, Sophia tucked the girls into beds that smelled like lavender and safety. She sat on the floor for a long time, notebook open, pencil scratching ghosts onto paper. She drew a kitchen with rounded corners. A bedroom with color-coded shelves. A hallway lit by motion-sensitive stars. Places for children to feel seen. To feel safe. Designs from a life she used to dream about, before Maxwell made her believe that dreaming was dangerous. In the other room, Daisy whispered, "Is this home, Mommy?" Sophia closed the notebook. "I don't know yet." Later, when the girls were asleep, she wandered outside and looked up at the main house. One window glowed dimly. A shadow stood behind it, Jonathan, staring down. She wondered what he saw. A burden? A threat? Or maybe something else? Something broken. Something that mirrored his own loss. Back inside, she whispered to herself as she lay on the couch. "Don't fall. Don't feel. Just survive." But even then, a small voice answered back. "What if this is the place we're meant to heal?" Jonathan knew the name the moment she said it. She hadn't meant to drop it. It slipped out like a wound tearing open mid-sentence. Maxwell, he didn't allow laughter during dinner. Said it made them disobedient. Jonathan froze. Spoon halfway to his mouth. He repeated the name slowly, testing if it still burned. Maxwell Pierce? Sophia's body stiffened. Her knuckles whitened around the mug of tea. She didn't look up. You know him? She asked. He didn't answer. Not right away. He didn't have to. Because of course he did. Maxwell Pierce was the man who had nearly annihilated Jonathan's career, branding his innovation as a shared collaboration, while quietly gutting the tech and calling it his own. 3 years of lawsuits. 3 years of Charlotte staying up late, reading depositions aloud as if they were bedtime stories. 3 years of watching everything he built hang by threads, and somehow convincing the world he'd still be standing. And now, Maxwell's children were curled up on his guesthouse floor, drawing with Tyler. I knew him, Jonathan finally said. Long ago. Sophia closed her eyes. I didn't plan this. I believe you. But that didn't make it easier. Later that night, he pored over her sketches again, as if lines of graphite could explain how the ex-wife of his greatest enemy ended up under his roof. Designs for spaces that breathed warmth. Rooms that anticipated children's fears. Every line showed instinct, not just talent, like she didn't design for clients, but for ghosts. At midnight, he stepped into the guest house without knocking. Sophia stood at the sink, folding towels like paper cranes. She didn't turn around. He knows you're here. A beat. I figured. You should have told me sooner. She turned, slowly, deliberately. And what would you have done? He didn't answer. Exactly, she whispered. You'd have shut the door before you opened it. Jonathan exhaled hard. He ruined my life. He ruined mine too. They stared at each other, two survivors of the same war, on different battlefields. You don't understand, she added. He's not just a manipulator. He's a collector. Everything he touches, he claims. And if it escapes, he hunts it down to prove he still owns it. Jonathan thought of the quiet flinch Violet made when she dropped a crayon earlier. The way Lily waited for permission before answering a question. The eerie silence they carried like second skin. You think he'll come? I know he will. The next morning, the news broke. A grainy photo of Sophia walking hand in hand with one of the girls outside Jonathan's home. The headline read, Tech CEO allegedly housing ex-wife of business rival, sources claim custody manipulation. The backlash was instant. By lunch, reporters were at the gates. By evening, his board had called 3 emergency meetings. By nightfall, Tyler's school group chats were flooded with screenshots and questions. Jonathan sat at his kitchen table, rubbing his temples while Elaine flipped her tablet toward him. You didn't think to tell PR. There wasn't time. There was always time, Jonathan. You just didn't want to explain. He looked up. Explain what? That 4 traumatized kids were starving and I fed them. You housed the family of your greatest rival during a corporate partnership renewal. That's not charity, it's a liability. Not to me. Elaine's voice softened. Then tell me what she is. Jonathan didn't answer. Because the truth was murkier than even he could admit. Back in the guest house, Sophia sat with her daughters in a ring of silence. The girls weren't playing. They weren't drawing. They were waiting, like they always had, for the next blow to fall. That's when Tyler walked in. No announcement. No questions. He sat cross-legged beside them and placed a toy robot in the middle of the rug. I thought maybe we could build something, he mumbled. Together. The girls blinked. Then Daisy reached out. Something shifted. Later, when Sophia tucked them into bed, Daisy asked, "Are we leaving again?" Sophia's throat tightened. Not tonight. She stepped outside, into the dark, hoping for air. But instead she found Jonathan waiting on the steps. I got a call from Maxwell's lawyer, he said. He's filing for emergency custody. Sophia's hands shook. He doesn't want them. He just wants the narrative. The ownership. Jonathan nodded. I believe you. But I'm not sure the world will. She sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching but never quite. I should go, she whispered. He didn't respond. After a long pause, she added, you've done enough. You don't need to carry our fire too. I'm not carrying it, he said. I'm standing in it with you. And for a moment, everything else, the media, the lawsuits, the storm building, disappeared. But it didn't last. The next morning, Tyler came running into the kitchen, tablet in hand, face pale. They posted a video. Jonathan took the screen. It showed Sophia in the grocery store parking lot. Holding a box. Talking to a store clerk. Voice barely audible. The caption read, Maxwell's ex seen begging while living off tech CEO's wealth. Sophia walked in just in time to see it. Her eyes went dark, the way only someone who's been hunted can go dark. I need to go, she said again, firmer now. No, Jonathan said. Now you stay. But. Because this time, he added, we fight back. Sophia looked at him. Really looked. You'd go to war, for us? Jonathan nodded. I already have. But outside, far beyond the glass, another car pulled to the curb. Sleek. Black. Familiar. And the man stepping out wore a smile sharpened by years of power. Maxwell Pierce had arrived. And nothing would ever be the same again. Maxwell didn't knock. He stood at the iron gate with two men in suits flanking him, arrogance sculpted into his posture like it was bone deep. His gaze swept over the house, the garden, the toys scattered near the porch, territory he believed was his to reclaim. Jonathan watched from the window, jaw locked tight. He didn't go out. Not yet. Instead, he turned to Sophia, who stood in the hallway gripping her daughter's birth certificates like a shield. He's early, she said, voice low. He never plays his hand this fast. Jonathan's voice was calm but steel-edged. Let him try. He's not getting past me. Tyler stepped into view, shoulders squared like a boy trying to be a man. Do you want me to take the girls upstairs? Sophia blinked, surprised. Jonathan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Yes. Lock the door. Stay with them. As the girls climbed the stairs, clutching each other like petals in a storm, Sophia turned to Jonathan. I've never had someone stand between me and him, she whispered. You do now. Outside, the gate clicked open. Jonathan stepped out, rain threatening to return overhead. The air tasted of metal and tension. Maxwell gave a smirk polished for the cameras. You've made this very public, Jonathan. No, Jonathan said evenly. You did, when you sent your lawyer instead of your conscience. Maxwell tilted his head, faux amusement in his eyes. She's a liar. Unstable. You think you're the first savior she's played? She didn't come to me, Jonathan said coldly. I found her. Starving. With your daughters afraid to speak above a whisper. They're mine, Maxwell snapped. No, Jonathan said. They're not. Not anymore. A beat. Then Maxwell stepped closer. This is a mistake. She'll ruin you. She already is. Your board is panicking, your investors are circling like sharks, and your name is smeared across headlines. And for what? A woman you barely know? For little girls with trauma you can't fix. Jonathan's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because I'd rather lose everything than become you. The silence cracked like thunder. Maxwell stared for a long moment, waiting for a reaction. A tremble. A retreat. He got neither. Then, behind them, the front door creaked open. Sophia stepped out. No makeup. No armor. Just truth in her hands. These, she said, lifting the folded papers, are proof of who their mother is. But you already knew that. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? I'm not hiding anymore, she said. You raised girls who flinch at laughter. Who whisper for permission to breathe. I raised them into survivors. And I will not let you take that from them. Maxwell stepped forward, fury flaring, but Marcus, Jonathan's head of security, appeared like a shadow from the side yard, silent, firm. Try something, Marcus said. Maxwell paused. Then he turned. He didn't say another word. He just walked away, stripped of his power by the very silence he used to weaponize. Jonathan exhaled slowly. That won't be the end of him. No, Sophia said. But maybe it's the end of who we were when he still had power over us. Inside, the girls were curled up in Tyler's room, coloring together. A quiet fort of pillows surrounded them. When Sophia stepped in, they rushed to her, speaking all at once. Did he come? Is he gone? Are we leaving again? She knelt. No, she whispered, tears in her voice. We're staying. Later that week, Jonathan received a letter. Anonymous. Postmarked from across the city. Inside was a USB. He plugged it into his private server, heart pounding. It was footage, surveillance, recordings from Maxwell's office. A woman's voice, frightened but firm. Threats. Plans. Proof. And attached, a note. He doesn't own everything. Use it well. They never found out who sent it. But it was enough. Enough for the judge to grant full custody to Sophia. Enough for Pierce Innovations to begin crumbling under public scrutiny and board infighting. Enough to finally let them exhale. Weeks passed. Then months. The media moved on. New scandals replaced the old ones. The world kept spinning. But inside Jonathan's estate, something else grew. Not just a relationship. But a rhythm. Saturday mornings meant pancakes and paint on Violet's fingers. Evenings were for Tyler and Rose coding together on the sofa. Sophia transformed the guest house into her first design studio, for blooms, named for the daughters she saved. And Jonathan? He smiled more. Not often. But real. One evening, as twilight stretched golden across the grass, the family gathered in the yard. The girls were planting cherry blossom trees, one for each of them. Lily asked, "What if they don't grow?" Jonathan crouched beside her. "Then we try again." Sophia stood nearby, arms crossed loosely, watching the life they had fought to build take root in the soil. She looked over as Jonathan joined her, their fingers brushing. "You built this," he said softly. She shook her head. "We built it. Together." Then she leaned in, just enough for her voice to become the only sound he heard. "I think we're allowed to be happy now." And for the first time in years, he believed it. No longer a man driven by revenge. No longer a woman running from ghosts. Just two people, standing in the garden they never thought they'd have, watching the next chapter bloom, one small miracle at a time.